It's not what any of us want to see, and everybody's around him, and it's
months, perhaps years ago, a new coronavirus spread silently within herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia. The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree, unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
We have known about CAPS-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
The former White House chief medical advisor, whether we should be worried about this. Doctor, good to see you. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Neil. Good to be with you.
I was just thinking, you've been pushing again, people have to get vaccinated. They should get their booster shots. We're told even ahead of this news, whatever you make of it, doctor, that only 16% of those eligible to get it have gotten it. And I'm wondering if news like this, which so far amounts to nothing too alarming, could give them pause.
Well, it might give them pause, but I think the important thing, Neil, to point out is how transparent and upfront the CDC has been. This is a signal, as your reporter correctly said, most likely is not going to be a relevant signal because several of the other surveillance and monitoring mechanisms that are put in place have not come up and found this signal. No other country has seen it. So although we feel, and the CDC feels obligated, appropriately so, to let the public know about it, it is more likely than not that it's not going to be a relevant signal. And that's the reason why they're saying we're not changing.
And they're trying to figure out what's causing it. Chris Whitty recently suggested that it could be because people weren't prescribed statins or blood pressure pills. But Carl Hennigan, that unfortunately, I've got respect for Chris Whitty, but I think he's mistaken here because analysis either and even Carl Hennigan, the director of Centre for Evidence-Based Medicine, Oxford, suggests that statin pills prescription hasn't reduced since the pandemic, so it's unlikely to be a cause. But what is almost certainly, and if you allow me to say this, LaQuesta, what my own research has found, and this is something that is probably a likely contributing factor, is that the COVID mRNA vaccines do carry a cardiovascular risk. And I've actually called for the suspension of this pending an inquiry because there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment about what's causing the deaths. Some of it will be ambulance delays. My own father, it was reported on BBC News in late 2021. I was the first to actually highlight the ambulance delays because my own father suffered a cardiac arrest at home and the ambulance took 30 minutes. And when his post-mortem came out, he had very severe coronary artery disease, which is unexplainable. I then published in a peer-reviewed journal. They accepted my findings that the likely cause of his death was 2 doses of the Pfizer mRNA vaccine he had 6 months earlier. So I think there's lots of...
All right. So that was a clip from the BBC. That was a clip from the BBC. We had a doctor that straight up on the BBC, we're breaking this new narrative is breaking the surface, the backlash, right? Which is freakishly close to the exact timeline laid out in the SPARS document. I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. We're looking at a snapshot of the SPARS pandemic document, and the SPARS pandemic simulation was an event held by the typical suspects, right? The usual suspects, rather. John Hopkins, I believe Bill and Melinda Gates were involved in that, right? The same players, some of them at least, that went on to, and this was in 2017, the SPARS pandemic simulation. It portrays a hypothetical scenario of a pandemic outbreak and a hypothetical situation where we get all these leaders from different sectors of society, doctors, scientists, journalists, media, think tanks, business, etc., to come together. How are we going to combat this on a global level, right? It's all about global cooperation, and note the heavy focus and usage of transgovernmental organizations, NGOs, think tanks. They fund these simulations, right? And they orchestrate the entire thing. And then, interestingly enough, precisely what we saw here ends up unfolding a few years later. This is 2017, SPARS. The next pandemic simulation was Event 201, October of 2019, which is even a freaky, pretty freaky, given how close in proximity it is to the actual outbreak itself and how accurate it retained. But Event 201 is the one that ended up getting popular, right? That's even the one that, like, people outside our scope of things have probably even heard of, right? It's like been memed to oblivion. We've really got it out in the open, like mainstream authoritative figures that, you know, are more right-leaning or whatever you want to call them. You know, I'm sure Tucker has probably brought it up, right? You get what I'm saying. But what is missed with the focus on Event 201, and don't get me wrong, Event 201 is of course vital in understanding the execution of all of this, especially if you pair Event 201, the pandemic simulation, with the clip of Anthony Fauci giving a discussion. I think it was also in October of 2019. It was either shortly before Event 201 or shortly after, and he was discussing the need for a new technological version of a vaccine, and I believe he straight up mentioned mRNA technology as a hopeful purveyor of future medicine, right? That's the future treatment of all sorts of diseases. And even scarier, though, it's either him or one of the people on the panel he's discussing all of this with at this event. He said there needs to be a seminal moment, though, for any of us to have the motivation to adopt widely and comprehensively mRNA type technology, these exotic new technologies that could be miracles, because remember, we want to build a utopia, right? At least that's what they're thinking to themselves, a utopia for them. And isn't it interesting that, you know, just like Project for a New American Century, we need a new Pearl Harbor if we want to do X, Y, and Z, and what happens like a year later? 9/11, which is literally like a Pearl Harbor, you know what I mean, happens. And then of course we have this, and then, well, we have a seminal moment again, and it's the exact thing that was simulated 2017. I mean, even earlier, but we're just focusing on SPARS and COVID because these are ultra specific. Point is, what gets missed when you focus on Event 201 is the fact that the SPARS pandemic document, in my opinion, seems to be way more accurate. Event 201 is, of course, accurate, but this is very specific. They establish a very specific timeline. As you could see, the SPARS pandemic 2025 to 2028. And by the way, the link is in the description, all the good stuff in the description, Linktree, bookmark it, all my links in one place. As you can see, 2025 to 2028. So what you have to look at this as is put our current timeline on the same timeline as this, from outbreak to the ending, which they claim to be 2028. So that, you know, it's a 3-year timeline, but they talk a little bit further out than that. So we're going to check this out, just the last chapter. So anyway, are we entering the last chapter of the SPARS simulation? Well, I'll tell you what, everything that has happened thus far throughout this COVID pandemic, it's mirrored, nearly identical to the SPARS pandemic. I'll give you an example. The SPARS pandemic even really closely comes to the idea of treatments They even had a fake name for what I believe to be ivermectin. The same things. How people universally bashed it, how they suppressed treatment options, X, Y, and Z. They simulated all of that, except it wasn't called the I word in this document. They made a fake name for it, just like they made a fake name for the virus, which is interesting that it's SPARS, SARS-CoV-2, you know, it's kind of weird. Okay, let's get started, guys. Please like this video, hit the thumbs up, share this video to the feed. Help me algorithmically, help me grow the channel. I can't speak today, apparently, but I appreciate you guys hanging. Keep this as brief as possible, as I always say, but does it work? I don't know.
How do we know if these vaccines are working?
Well, there's three things you'd like from a vaccine. You'd like it to be very safe, no side effects, no side effects, no side effects. You'd like it to block transmission.
The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect. Are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA
but the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a
Okay, my mic is back online. Enough of that. Let's get to the document. Oh, guys, by the way, wait till the end. I have a few things I want to talk to you about. Very important stuff. You'll wanna stay afterwards to listen to this. And being relentlessly pursued and attacked by one of the subjects of a previous video. Nothing serious, but her relentless pursuit is interesting. And I just wanted to acknowledge some things that she said because it's kind of a personal jab, and I just don't. I at least want to put those words on the record. I don't mean to blow it out of proportion. It's really not that serious, but I just want to make myself clear. So it'd be cool if you stick around and just like hear that out real quick. What am I looking for again? Got wrapped up with that riffraff. Okay, we're gonna open. Oh, that's right. It's fucking like this. Okay, here's the actual document itself. Do I have the screen out of the way? Yeah, we're good. Okay. So link in the description, guys. You can access the PDF yourself. See what I'm telling you. It's not nonsense. The SPARS Pandemic 2025, a futuristic scenario for public health risk communications. Remember, it's a John Hopkins simulation. See who else is involved. They lay it out. Yeah, the John Hopkins Center for Health Security. Here's the project team. In this video, we're not going to dive deep into these individuals here. We're more looking for just the broad, general outlook, framework, scaffolding of how this simulation works, how freakishly close it got to what happened. So, the John Hopkins Center for Health and Security works to protect people from epidemics and disasters and build resilient communities through innovative scholarship, engagement, and research that strengthens the organizations, systems, policies, and programs essential to preventing and responding to the next public health emergency. Or John Hopkins. And I'm sure they do a bunch of good work, but then they get a little freaky and do shit like this, and it makes you wonder. So the first thing, here's the table of contents, and the chapter names are interesting and eye-catching already. So right off the bat, the preface, a possible future in 2025, the echo chamber. So is this not an like a recurring theme that's been covered relentlessly on this channel? The idea that we're being technologically fragmented, put into our own little technological bubbles, curated newsfeed, curated social media posts, everything is confirmation to your perspective because everything you see on the internet and social media is curated and produced and dispersed out to you based on your likes, your interests, where you travel, your location data, your this, your that, the other thing, all the digital version of you Google takes in, chews up in its mouth, and then it spits it out into a beautiful little algorithm that feeds you what you want to see, hear, think, feel, etc. That's their framework, right? So it's interesting that they decided to put this pandemic scenario in their world. The pandemic breaks out, this new virus breaks out, in the same type of future here where the world has been severely socially fragmented by technology and we live in different worlds technologically. And they're wondering, how are we going to handle that when it comes to disseminating public health information when millions are dying, right? So in other words, people like you and I are getting in the way of that, right? Which is why we go back to the civil sanctuary program. Please, if you haven't seen that, it's for your own good. Go back and watch that video. Moderation being done by AI to avoid dangerous and destructive, that's what they said, destructive content in disaster scenarios. Well, guess what? COVID is one of those things that could very likely never go away. All you got to do is synthetically whip up something brand new, soup that shit up, make it out of fuck it, I don't know, make it do something subtle over time, like our legs grow shorter or whatever. And then it's like, oh, I gotta get a vaccine for that. It's a reoccurring process. It's synthetic virus dispersed and a synthetic creation administered to combat it. It's a vicious, infinite cycle. So if you're talking disaster scenarios being the pretense for this new automated AI system for public health emergencies, well, it looks like we're kind of in like a forever now public health emergency. We're all going to get boiled alive by climate change. Ozone is going to come down, reach me, and I don't know, eat me. Actually, the ozone's growing back, I think. Wasn't that the story like a few years ago? And now it's like the oceans are going to rise. Everything's going to be flooded like Noah's Ark by 100 years. But you don't believe... How do you even know about Noah's Ark? Don't you hate God? Nah, shut up. But still, it's going to be kind of like that. Okay, oceanfront properties, you know, that old joke, which is funny, because a lot of people don't think of it that way. I'm sure they have a clever, I don't know, rebuke of that. I would love to hear it. I haven't thought that deep into it. All I need to know is that they're trying to tax carbon, aka me, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever argument led them to taking those actions must be just shit. You know, it's like, okay. Whatever information takes you to truly being enthusiastic about trying to roll out depopulation agendas is like, where'd you go? Like, I don't know that information that got you there, dude, but it doesn't sound very good. Anyway, so response, this is about the response of the scenario. The SPARS outbreak begins, a possible cure, a potential vaccine, users beware, going viral, changing horses midstream, I think is where the Ivor medicine, right? The one that was horse paste, propagandized into oblivion by mainstream media for some strange reason. They had a fascination with it. If you ever said it's a treatment option, you would be decried as a horse paste eater, as if that's the only thing it is. Well, it's a sneaky little technique. Well, anyway, I think this is the chapter that has that. The end is the most interesting, what we'll be covering today. Chapter 17, vaccine injury. Chapter 18, acknowledging loss. Chapter 19, SPARS aftermath. So that's the titles of those three chapters consecutively under the recovery part of the book, while knowing this is freakishly close to what's happening the entire time. It's been really close all up until now. So I have no reason to suspect it won't accurately kind of predict what's actually going to happen. To see vaccine injury, acknowledging loss, SPARS aftermath together, this makes you go, shit. And this doesn't feel too good, right? You don't want bad to be real. It's already been bad enough. All right. Let's get into the nitty-gritty, fellers. Please hit the thumbs up for ya, boy. Help me ride that algo. Okay, vaccine injury, chapter 17. In contrast to Alyssa Karpowitz's story, not all changes in opinion were in favor of public health messaging. As time passed and more people across the United States were vaccinated, claims of adverse side effects began to emerge. Hold on, let me check my audio. Don't tell me I've been muted this whole time. Nope, we're good. Sorry, guys. All right. Yes, as time passed and more people across the states were vaccinated, claims of adverse side effects began to emerge. Several parents claimed that their children were experiencing neurological symptoms similar to those seen among livestock exposed to the GMI vaccine. By May 2027, okay, so just think of the timeline here. It's 2025 to 2028. If you just pull that timeline back, it's really 2020 to whatever, you get what I'm saying? Obviously, it's not going to be 100% correct on everything, but by May of 2027, parental anxiety around this claim had intensified to the point of lawsuits. So in this scenario, it takes at least a year of the vaccine program to be administered widespread to millions of people around the world before any of these symptoms emerge. That's the interesting thing. It's not that this caught attention, vaccine stuff caught attention just because their voices weren't being heard or whatever. The actual issues that came from it took that long to come about, and it's interesting. I can't see too much. I'm on YouTube right now, but I just wanted to read the basics here. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of immune shenanigans, maybe, when confronted with a stimuli like that, and it makes your body react in a certain way, right? Like that's why a lot of the lists, the FDA listed it out, all sorts of immune responses, rashes, this, that, the other thing, more severe stuff. You guys get the picture, right? You know what I'm talking about. Spelling it out is going to make me, it's going to get me removed from here. So it's just kind of similar to that. 1 year. I'm not a doctor, but like in this case, I guess, neurological symptoms. Let's hope to God that's not the case here. And then, of course, it gets everyone riled up to a point where the mainstream media can no longer cover this. Right now, this is what the whole point of this is, I think that's where we are now in this timeline. Right now, we're at the point where, think of the intro I just showed you. That was a BBC clip. It started with the NFL player dropping from a heart-related issue in front of millions of Americans watching the show personally and live on television in front of the world, collapsed after a hit that wasn't even that severe. Immediately, of course, the social media battle erupted between, was it something natural because of the hit, or was it the you-know-what? And it was vicious how quickly that argument erupted, because it's almost like we all deep down inside know about it. Like, the counter argument, no, dude, it definitely wasn't the you-know-what, it's because you got hit hard. Why were they so quick to say it wasn't the you-know-what? Was it on their mind? Was it something that they had already been thinking about? Maybe subconsciously in there, that little twang of worry? Like, could it be bad? I don't know. I'm not Freud, I don't know. I guess I'm just saying. All these people get riled up, and it intensifies to the point of lawsuits in this pandemic scenario. Well, the NFL player collapses, we all see it, it erupts. The cover story right now is the virus itself causes heart issues. So we can't tell which one is because of this, which has also been confirmed to cause the same type of issues. They say at a lesser rate. But how convenient. Now the waters are muddy, and we can't differentiate, at least not at this moment, between virus-related heart ailments or you-know-what related heart ailments. How convenient for them if there were nefarious machinations motivating this entire operation. Vaccine rollout, virus rollout, things like that. Commotio, how do you pronounce it? Commotio cardis is what they said. The idea that if you hit somebody's heart extremely hard in a certain, like when the heart is in mid-beat in a certain, like you have to fulfill like 6 pieces of complex criteria. It's like winning the lottery. That's what causes this to happen. It usually happens with like baseballs being fucking hit by a bat, just hitting your heart, bouncing off your heart, making it go, ooh, you know, that type of stuff. And they rely so heavily on that argument during that issue with Hamlin, which, by the way, thank God that he is alive, right? We're all thankful for that. People kind of lose track of that in the discourse, mostly just pee-pee poo-poo. You know, that's really all it is, just shit. Arguments online nowadays, it's devolved into nothing. Anyway, let me move on. By May 2027, yep, it erupts. Lawsuits start to roll out. That month, a group of parents whose children developed mental retardation as a result of encephalitis in the wake of the Coravax vaccination, that's what it's called here in this world, the Coravax vaccination, they ended up suing the federal government, and they demanded the removal of the liability shield protecting the pharmaceutical companies. Wow, that's awfully specific, because what has been a major contention, a major grievance, complaint, an accusation of all of us is the fact that these people are immune from prosecution should anything go wrong, right? Why would you want to take something that, number one, made by a company that is already on the record as being like what, the largest pharmaceutical lawsuit, multi-billion-dollar lawsuit because of some evil thing they did with their drugs. They ended up killing 50,000 people. I forget the name of the drug, but it went out, ended up killing that many people, 50,000. 9/11 killed 3,000. How many did COVID kill? Truly kill. Even official numbers of COVID, like it just I don't even know. Well, COVID was a lot more, of course, but that's a bad example. I don't know. It's wild shit. All right, let's get back to this. I'm not going to go on with it. Neurological symptoms. Fuck, man. Zombies. That's what this is talking about. Anyway, mental retardation as a result of encephalitis in the wake of the Coravax vaccination. That's what these children developed, and their mommies, their daddies sued the federal government, and the numbers were so large and they were so intense that there was, there's basically no choice but to acknowledge them. And not only that, they knew exactly what to target. Removal of the liability shield protecting the pharmaceutical companies, which, by the way, is of utmost importance now based on the fact that, God forbid, anyone that does suffer a side effect from one of these things during the treatment regimen, that's the one thing that they're beholden to, is the fact that, God forbid anything happens, there's no one to bring to justice, right? Just due to that shield. Where else will you ever see something like that, guys? Where you get a mass swath of the population to ingest something that didn't even go through the same rigorous process as like Kellogg's cereal does. I'm being hyperbolic here, but what I'm trying to say is it was tested, but not thoroughly. Like, I don't understand how that's not clear to so many people. I guess because if it were clear, nobody would take the new exotic vaccine technology from the company that's been sued before for, medicine that kills and also has a liability shield preventing here, take this exotic new thing I just whipped up in my fucking basement. And by the way, if something goes wrong, it's not on me. Despite any other situation where it would be on me, we're just special. It's not on me, never will be on me. Heart stuff, collapse, stroke, clots, not on me. Sorry. That's all I gotta say. That's the liability shield. It's fucking crazy. The growing plaintiff cohort quickly withdrew their suit upon learning that the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Trust Fund and an emergency appropriation of funds authorized by Congress under the PrEP Act existed to provide financial reimbursement to those who were adversely affected by the Coravax vaccine in order to cover healthcare costs and other related expenses. So, it's like what was it? Reimbursing the victims of Epstein, right? All these victims of Epstein came out, they were proven to be victims, and they get reimbursed money from Epstein's estate or whatever it is. Well, same thing happening here with the Coravax vaccine treatment regimen that went out after the SPARS pandemic outbreak in 2025. There were so many parents of kids that hadn't turned mentally retarded, as they put it, had neurological issues, this, that. They go to sue the federal government. Hey, take down that pharmaceutical company's liability shield. This is bullshit. My kid's all fucked up. He's like a slug now. He's all messed up. Take it down. But then that growing group of people of vaccine injured withdrew their lawsuit in this world upon learning, hey, wait, maybe a better route exists, the National Vaccine Injury Compensation Trust Fund. Maybe we can just go to that, prove that these neurological conditions are happening, and I get treatment, healthcare, and financial reimbursement assistance through a set of emergency appropriation funds that were authorized by Congress under what in this, I don't know if the PrEP Act is real. I can't remember. I feel like, no, I don't know. I don't know if that's not in my head. It doesn't matter though. Things like it exist, right? They just give them alternate names here. Given the positive reaction to the federal government's response and the fact that the majority of U.S. citizens willing to be vaccinated had already been immunized, the negative publicity surrounding adverse reactions had little effect on nationwide vaccination rates. Yeah, despite all of this unfolding group of individuals that are intensely angry and upset, I did the right thing. I did what I was told and it resulted in this, trying to, sue the federal government. Still, nationwide vaccination rates stay the same. Just goes to show you what needs to happen. Anyway, this is interesting. The focus on adverse side effects, however, resulted in a considerable increase in the number of compensation claims filed, and many grew concerned about the long-term effects that Coravax could have on their health. So, I mean, let's think about for a moment where we are right now. As I'll say this again, what we saw before was more important than it really looks. That was just a doctor on a mainstream platform. The BBC, the ones up until now, have been relentlessly, decrying any alternative theories, especially related to COVID, but especially related to the treatment of that virus, right? But now, hey, you notice they're trickle truthing it, right? Okay, yes, it does cause, in some cases, heart nonsense and ailments. Okay, yes, it does that. It's over time, slowly. Just like in this scenario, just for a different reason. It's not that it took a year for symptoms to start, like in this scenario. In real life, it ends up in the same thing, just by different means. In reality, it's that all this started happening right away, I believe, right? After the program rolled out. It's just that we've been suppressed. The news, the studies have all been suppressed. Now, that's not going to hold anymore. I'm convinced personally that that's actually just a temporary holding chamber until the inevitable backlash, the spillover occurs, which they're already prepared for. Think of how freakishly fast they came up with Hamlin's story before the guy was even diagnosed by doctors, looked at by doctors, given the scans. They were still just an hour past saving the guy's life and miraculously resuscitating him after like 9 minutes, twice. Or was it once? I don't know. The two doctors that gave us press conference can't seem to agree on that. If you listen carefully to the two doctors that have the little hat, the bandana things on their head, and they're sitting there in their doctor gowns on the table, all official. One says it was 1 resuscitation, but the other says 2, and but for sure, it's Commotio cardis, or whatever the fuck, however you pronounce it. I don't care to find out right now. You know what I'm talking about. And then they use that as an argument to ignore a possible variable, a possible contributor. Like any other reasonable, HIPAA-compliant, fucking oath-compliant doctor would do. It was, who was it? It was like Peter McCullough maybe, talking about it needs to be in the differential diagnosis. Like you can't just eliminate what from the possible contributors to what happened to him collapsing on the field. It has to be included and then ruled out. If it's ruled out, great. But it has to be at least examined. So, I don't know what the situation is now with him. And I'm not saying one way or the other what happened. My point is that the media is just as guilty as they say we are by rushing to say it's some shit, Commotio or whatever, that doctors didn't even really say it was. It was all an argument. I don't believe he was truly, this is it for sure. It was just the media said it was because he got hit super hard and they played up the hit. After an intense hit, Hamlin fell over like a bag of bricks, and then he got resuscitated, and guess what? It wasn't from that thing this group of fucking weirdos says it was. The Pope. It's like, what, dude? What are you fucking talking about? That, number one, they live in a different world. They're just straight up lying. That was not an intense hit. What I'm saying is these athletes are top tier. Like, they're screening them for fucking everything, man. Everything. They do crazy stuff in there. They're putting them in like cryo chambers, making them time travel and shit to gain muscle mass. They're doing all that shit. Straight up super soldiers, man. Some of them go off to do super soldiers stuff. So they clearly would have picked up on a pre-existing heart condition, right? That may or may not be related to COVID and the treatment of that. But again, we go back to the muddying of the waters, right? How can you tell if it was from COVID or the treatment? What I'm saying is we can rule out a natural heart condition he was born with. I mean, I don't think they would have let him play like that, right? If a single moderate hit is enough to keel him over like that. for his heart to stop, right? I'm just pulling this up, but that's got to be the case. Spontaneous natural conditions come up, I'm sure. It's not unheard of for people to have heart attacks and stuff at a young age, but this guy's like an apex predator athlete. So all I'm saying is I need some definitive proof, spontaneous or otherwise. The issue is that, you know, if it's natural and spontaneous, you know, or something else. But then again, they're going to fall back on the idea that COVID, the virus itself, causes the heart issue. Right? That's the cover story, or maybe it's accurate. I doubt it. I think it's too convenient, once again. It muddies the waters for investigators gathering statistics, or at least trying to. And it provides them cover. It's the virus's fault, the totally natural virus's fault, not my fault. How convenient for them, right? And it meant it's sort of like many people kind of like getting that fear in them, right? Internally. Which I just said a moment ago that I think is probably happening. Like, I think people might be thinking about this more than you might think, even the most vocally against us. Many grew concerned about the long-term effects that Coravax could have on their health. And if they mentioned it was particularly high among some African-American parents. And they were the ones questioning the government's motives regarding the Coravax vaccination campaign. And we saw this, they mentioned this at the beginning of the scenario too. Because we already know that unfortunately that's a group of individuals that have been experimented on relentlessly, the syphilis programs, things like that, awful things done, right? We have to acknowledge that. It's the same group of people doing awful things to all groups of people. It's a common enemy we all have together. Race war, infighting, bullshit is just a distraction to keep us divided. So of course they would be suspicious of the government's motives. While the FDA, CDC, and other agencies were busy researching possible connections between Coravax and the reported neurological side effects, their efforts were continually undermined by epidemiological analyses produced by various non-governmental individuals and groups, aka, guess what, this is where we come in. Again, as if we didn't feature prominently enough throughout this pandemic scenario, and we're always the pain in the ass. We're always the pain in the ass that has now become dangerous. Science blogger Epigirl, for example, began posting interactive maps of the incidence of Coravax side effects in April of 2027. To create the maps, Epigirl collected anecdotes of adverse Coravax side effects using Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and combined them with data downloaded from the HHS Vaccine Adverse VAERS, a national vaccine safety surveillance program, which is maintained by the CDC and FDA. So, isn't that interesting? What they're describing there is crowdsourced intelligence that we're seeing unfold since the beginning of all this, and basically see unfold during every major event. It happened with 9/11, of course, technology more primitive. It's this. There was discussions online about it, of course, researching stuff like that, of course. Just the landscape's a little different now. But it happens with everything. There's always the sleuths. Moscow, Idaho, student murders. There's a community of people that diligently research and pull out crazy information that's incredibly difficult to find. There's always those people. So Epigirl is an example of like a content creator that was raising the alarm of Coravax side effects. So she's a disinfo, Russian troll, conspiracy theorist, QAnon insurrectionist, right? In this world, she's kind of playing that role. And she just collected publicly available information, mind you. And by the way, we live in a world where the VAERS system is still being disregarded. Remember the argument these people made? Yeah, but anybody can make a report. That doesn't mean all of those numbers are real. It's not about whether or not they're all real. It's about that there's such a high, exponentially higher amount of adverse effect reports for this vaccine in general, that it actually has more reports associated with it than the reports of multiple different vaccine programs in the past. I don't know how many, but that's crazy. So even if not all of those reports are accurate or truly from the you-know-what, it's a skyscraper of reports that has never happened from any vaccine before. So in our reality, we're living in a world where VAERS is actively spoken out against as not accurate, not scientific, even though before this it was an accurate thing to at least diagnose or get a feel for safety signals. Now it's spoken out against, not relied upon, and dissuaded against using. In reality is inverse, right? It's on its head. The same way that the January 6th turned into an insurrection and was also a super spreader event, while George Floyd riots was not a super spreader event. That's an inversion. You can just go from believing one thing to believing another with no thought or question. You don't even know you do it. Fuck Trump. Down with MAGA. I'm never going to take a stupid ass vaccine. Who's with me? Who's not going to take the stupid Trump vaccine? Remember those people? That then, like a few months later, were like, I can't wait for the vaccine. Trump couldn't do it. He was inadequate. Biden forever. Love this vaccine. It's awesome. It's like, do you not remember what you said? You weren't going to take it because it was Trump, but now, now it's safe because Biden or whatever. It's fucking crazy. Him just make you believe whatever they want, I guess. So anyway, sounds a lot like us, sounds a lot like some of the information we rely on. They get even more specific though, because I think they even mentioned doctors getting in on the mix, and that's what we see. We got Robert Malone out there, these authoritative figures from that world that come out and speak out. John Campbell is kind of becoming one of those people, at least it seems like he is. Anyway, let's continue. The federal government became concerned about the validity of Epigirl's anecdotal data and the widespread sharing of patient info via the internet. Notice widespread sharing of patient info. There's no confidentiality there. In this world, what we're doing is collecting these Twitter things, right? Just got my booster, so hyped, you stupid idiots. If you don't get your vaccine, you should die. Then like 2 months later, there's a tweet, rest in peace so-and-so, that only 6 months earlier said, I just got my booster. That's publicly available data, dude. Patient information? Don't make it sound like something it's not. It's a couple tweets and obituaries and things like that anybody can see. Epigirl's data showed a significantly higher incidence rate of nearly every reported side effect. However, federal officials believe that this was largely due to duplicate entries resulting from compiling data from multiple sources. So her way of compiling data is inaccurate. They're not attacking the data itself, notice, which is what we see in our own reality right now. They don't attack the data. They're attacking the methods you use to get it. Hey, take a look at, for an example, take a look at this VAERS information. I mean, that's a lot of reports, don't you think? Rather than going at it in like a strategic but objective way, they just follow the line of like, this is no, we can't use VAERS, anymore. Well, why not? Well, because anybody can make the report, Well, it's like, okay, yeah, anybody can make the report, but like, are you going to really sit there and tell me there's nothing accurate in there? So instead, what they really should be saying, if they're critical of VAERS, is, well, it does take thorough diagnostics. You have to sift through the reports, determine which ones are real, which ones aren't. But yeah, definitely always look into the ones that seem legit. Because if they said that, definitely always look into the ones that seem legit. They'd have to admit that, okay, yeah, we should use VAERS, actually. Think about all those reports going unnoticed. I mean, I don't know if they're only accessible in VAERS or whatever. It's probably reported to multiple agencies, but I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of shit in there that's like not ever going to be acted on, that was submitted to VAERS, then made fun of on live television. Fuck VAERS, dude. You think that's legit? Ha, you're stupid. Meanwhile, there's been like mad mothers that like made VAERS reports about their, beloved son that's now wiggling and squirming all day because he got the you-know-what. Oh, and this is the important part, though, making it increasing. Okay, furthermore, these cases arose from the initial... Oh, that's a little too further down. Hold on. Oh, duplicate entries, right. So her data wasn't good enough. She got it wrong. Anyway, while the federal government appeared to have appropriately addressed concerns around the acute side effects of CoroVax. The long-term chronic effects of the vaccine were still largely unknown. Oh, really? Okay, so now still largely unknown. Now you're saying that? Like, now that's okay to say? I'm not sure if they talk about a fast-tracked vaccine specifically. However, we know that Event 201 did. Flashback to my intro. Remember that doctor that was speaking about vaccines and how, it's not likely we'll get a vaccine that's safe out to the public in time for this pandemic. He straight up said, it usually takes a while to do these types of things. We're not going to be able to do it in time to actually assist us in beating this pandemic. That was the prevailing belief at the time. But, yeah, of course, they can't acknowledge their shitty studies, inadequate studies, long-term clinical trial stuff, the lack of, rather. So they can't come right out and say it. They all know it. And this was at nearing the end of 2027, though. And around that point in time, that's when new neurological symptoms began to emerge. And that was the adverse side effects for nearly a year. Blurry vision, headaches, numbness in their extremities. Once again, a complication in trying to determine causation between the vax and the issues. The significance of their association, due to the small number of the cases with these side effects, it became difficult to prove their association with CoroVax. As of this writing in 2030, so apparently the SPARS pandemic this report is being written in the year 2030. As of this, just 5 years after the outbreak in this world, as of writing in 2030, longitudinal studies initiated by the NIH at the beginning of the treatment JABI program have not reached the next round of data collection. So formal analysis on these symptoms has not yet been conducted. Furthermore, these cases arose from the initial cohort of vaccine recipients, those in high-risk populations, those with underlying health conditions, which makes it increasingly difficult to determine the extent to which these symptoms are once again associated with the CoroVax treatment regimen. Just fill in the blank with the actual company's name in our reality. How familiar does that sound? This infinite cycle of not being able to determine causation between, was this caused by the you-know-what, or was it caused by something else? In this world, the elites didn't set up the narrative that the virus causes heart issues. How convenient. So what they're saying, they created in this pandemic scenario an alternate way to make it increasingly difficult to get accurate statistics on vax-related incidents. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like someone wrote a story and people that wanted to plan and release and cause COVID took the story and said, I like this really riveting story. And all they did is changed a few names. That's it. That's kind of what I'm trying to say is instead of, he gets everyone locked down and quarantined because of this, let's make it because of this instead. Like that's literally the differences between this simulation and, what we're living through. All right, let me see here. I gotta wrap this up in a little bit. So yeah, of course, as more cases emerged, patients began filing for compensation under the PrEP Act. Remember, they tried to sue the federal government at first, but they realized, oh, the PrEP Act is there with money from Congress to reimburse us for damages. Due to lingering uncertainties over possible links between the POCI and reported neurological symptoms, their compensation requests were placed on indefinite hold pending further data analysis. This cohort, many of whom adamantly supported the CoroVax vaccine initially, quickly took to social media to publicize their issues. Interesting. Will we see that? I don't know, but in a way, I've already seen that. There's been plenty of people that went from fully on board with the system and the mainstream talking points, totally on board with the vaccine program, totally on board with warp speed, totally on board with this new treatment program and this technology, to suddenly 1 year later come out and speak against it. Number one, people like Robert Malone, I'm always suspect of these types. Are they grifters? Are they not? Whatever. So I'm not going to get into that argument right now. I'm not even going to take a side or a position on Malone or any of these names. Point is that the story goes is Robert Malone was pro-vax, I guess, got at least one dose, two, I don't know, and he had heart-related shenanigans after that. And now he's, he holds patents in mRNA tech, the same tech, bioplatform technology, injectables, that the COVID vax is based on. Interesting. Then there's Dr. John Campbell, who got red-pilled in front of the entire world, started at the beginning of this outbreak, completely on board with the mainstream talking points, totally hyped for that vax, going to get a Pfizer tat on his forehead, 75-year-old dude getting tats, Pfizer tats, tatted up. Well, 1 year later, he sees evidence of the fraud, like many of us began to see, if you look carefully. So, as these cases emerge, more and more patients were looking for compensation. And a good chunk of those people in the SPARS pandemic simulation world is that, horribly, they were originally the most voracious of the pro-vaxxers. And that's unfortunately something we might end up seeing and already have seen a little bit of. Despite relatively few reports of neurological symptoms, the social media response was immense. So once again, I can't get into it here, but that constant focus, the idea of echo chambers, remember, they said the primary issue in dealing with a pandemic, essentially, in this report, is social media and information sharing. The biggest fear is the ability to coordinate logistically treatment options universal across the board, across all countries, in order to, stop the spread of the pandemic or prevent a pandemic to begin with, right? It's all about this global cooperation to combat global viruses that don't stay within borders. So it's collectivistic by nature, which is, once again, convenient because that's exactly what they want. The likes of Klaus, these NGOs, the powers that be. It's all about collectivizing the world, globalism, uniting us under a singular world religion, one world government. Things like this help speed that along because very permanent things come from moments that require global cooperation. We're seeing the Global Pandemic Treaty, where a more thorough, really regimented, really far-reaching immunity passport is released in full. In a lot of ways, COVID was a trial run. It was very real, but not all of it was real, or at least real in the way you think it was. It was about conditioning you with fear, awful fear, and perhaps even not just only the fear of death, but also maybe experiencing it yourself, right? People have health issues. Viruses don't do well for them. A mother, a father, a brother, a sister, an aunt, whatever, a friend. It's like, I don't even know, man. Maybe I should just stop ranting and actually just finish this up. It's crazy. That's all I'm saying. This document is vital to read. And you'd see if you start at the beginning, you'll see how accurate it was. And this exists in a world of a technologically fragmented society who kind of exists in their own bubbles. Right-wing domestic terrorists, QAnon Nazis only see that type of stuff. The lefties only see their type of stuff. Both sides, because they don't see other information that challenges their own beliefs, are become convinced that their way of thinking is a consensus, a majority, right, accepted by the rest of people. So when they go out into physical reality and look up from their iPhones and actually confront each other for the first time physically in the meat world, they're both absolutely baffled and angry that someone like that could possibly exist, that really is actually in real. I've only seen them in memes. I can't believe I actually met someone that had some issues with the elections. I can't believe that. I can't believe these people exist. It's like, how did you fall so far as to just be absolutely, utterly baffled that someone with those thoughts exists? Some high-tier, high-ranking spell casting, dude. That's some high-ranking spell casting, dude. All right, give me 1 sec. I want to stick around for this. I want to tell you about something real quick. Give me 1 sec. Give me one sec. Okay, hold on. I'll be right with you. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. I was trying to find it. So I want to just talk to you really quick. Abrupt ending. I got to get this out before it gets too late. I have something to do. So a while ago, I made a video about a particular drag superstar of a young age in the context of like a pizza-related video talking about how, wow, I can't believe, that this drag superstar of a young age did an interview with someone that has a history of murder, right? He killed a guy, dismembered him in a bathtub, got out of prison, and the focal point of the video was about how a figure, Elephantis, of pizza-related debunked conspiracy theories, posted a letter of support for that man on his Facebook, and then that man would go on to do an interview with that unnamed drag kid superstar. And, I guess the mother has an issue with this. I don't quite understand it fully myself. I've done nothing in that video that was entirely outlandish. She claims they're baseless claims, right? She even called it perverted that somebody would use her minor child's image to spread baseless and borderline slanderous claims, I think is what she said. Look, I rewatched the video because I wanted to make sure I wasn't like, did I step over a line? Did I say anything that wasn't true? Was I clear enough? Could there be something misunderstood here? Because they approached it as a copyright complaint and then other things, even on the alt platforms. Twitter, Rockfin, YouTube, what else? And then Twitter, yeah. Twitter was because of the thumbnail, which is an image I retrieved by going to Google and searching that kid's name and taking like the first high HD photo I could find, publicly available. And then basically any video clip I used in that video, like when YouTube had to remove it, they said, here are the offending timestamps. If you remove the timestamps, the video's good. And the timestamps were like the entire video. So I said, okay, so she just wants to have me remove literally every appearance of her child. And it didn't focus on him, wasn't targeting a child, calling him names, making fun of him. It was all from a place of concern, right? If you all remember, if you were there, we just basically aired the belief that, hey, I don't think it's a very great idea. It could give adults the wrong idea, right? Some sexualizing stuff going on. As long as he's safe and happy, we're happy. But I think it's concerning that he knows about drugs like ketamine and how to snort ketamine. That was basically the extent of what we said. Nobody is attacking anybody directly, especially not a kid. So when I get pursued on every platform by someone that, of all the coverage that's been put on her child, that's aired on Times Square billboards, done events that feature him dancing for children and grown adults, thrown money at sometimes, dollar bills. Okay, do your thing. I didn't even say in that video that whatever. I just said maybe the sexualizing is wrong. What else did I say? Nothing. So despite all of that coverage, the billboards, the shows, the interviews, the viral buzz sensation, the drag phenomenon. It's me. It's me. It's me that's got to be relentlessly hunted down like a little bad boy piglet. It's saying, look, you're using the images of my minor son for slanderous, perverted, baseless claims. Look, I'm not perverted, right? Isn't that a strange? So when you call me it was kind of a personal thing. The way she wrote it was just kind of personal because it was separate from her formal complaint to Twitter. And it was started off with, on a side note. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is where you get in those extra thoughts, right? The ones that you want known, but like is kind of outside a copyright thing. Like your thoughts on whether that is perverted or not. Me putting a publicly available image of your kid as a thumbnail image with other images, by the way, it wasn't just him. We didn't ask for your thoughts about whether that was perverted. You just had to fill out a copyright form, but you wanted to make that known that it is perverted for an adult to use the likeness of her minor child in a video to spread slanderous claims. So if you watch the video, I've already taken down the fact that there is no slanderous claims because I said nothing that was false. Any image of the individual put on the screen was publicly available on YouTube with the likes of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. He's garnered tens of millions of views at the peak of his virality. We didn't level any baseless attacks against anybody. Like I said, let alone a kid. Like, let alone a kid. It's ridiculous. I understand that you might not like it, but I did nothing but just stick to the truth and facts and stuff, and it's all right there out in the open. I would go so far as to say, like, there's worse evils in my opinion. I don't think what I'm doing is anywhere near as questionable as some other things. But see, that's called an opinion. I'm not trying to hurt you. There's lots of worse things being said about your son than anything I said. I cut him a lot of slack because that's truly what I feel. I don't hate anybody. I'm not going to attack a kid. Are you fucking crazy? It's just, I think it's weird to call someone like me perverted over that when literally all I did was he was a side story to the main story. Hey, did you know James posted this letter of support for this killer? Whoa, wait a moment, hold on. That drag superstar also interviewed with him? Isn't that kind of weird? That's what the video, it was like a side note thing, you know what I mean? We did spend a few minutes on it, but I don't know, just crazy. I want to make that known because, like, I don't like that. I'm not perverted. Did any of you, I'll be damned if any of you got the vibe that I had bad intentions for that. That's crazy, man. Like, I think everyone should know by now what my intentions are. I don't even think I come off as a fucking creeper. Yeah, let me make videos of this fucking... Do you know how many videos have been made of that kid? Like, countless videos, man. So you can tell that, like, whatever reason she wants her removed is not because of copyright infringement. It's because of the, on a side note part, the he's perverted, questionable, why would he use my kid's images part. Which I don't take lightly because that's my name, come on now, that's fucked up. And I didn't even say anything like that in my video. But by the way, guys, this is not that serious. The only reason I'm doing this is because I just want it on the record. I could have been more elegant about it. I got the feeling across. I just want it on the record because, I understand her plight. It's really actually just easy to abide by those requests when it's not like an ultra important video. I'm willing to compromise sometimes just because the trouble isn't worth it. And, maybe just fuck it, just make her happy in this case. Usually I'm not the type to bend a knee, but like, look, if you honed in on me out of all the millions of video clips that, that kid has starred in, for whatever reason for you, it's me, just fuck it. I'll delete it because God knows who else she's chatting with. If she's calling me perverted and using a minor's image, like, how does that make me sound to whomever she talks to? She's obviously motivated enough to bring me down across all platforms. Motivated by what? Like powered, fueled by what? Anger? I can't imagine her description of me would be very charitable then. So then those people, I don't know who, she probably has some connections, right? It's like, he was kind of a phenomenon, as I said. Who knows what connections she's made as the mother that also aids like the event promoting, you know, it's her kid after all. I don't know. Just thinking out loud. I'm just not trying to say it's a big deal. I just, you know, if someone says something about that to me, about me, I gotta say something, you know? There's no disrespect ever meant on this channel, but some people, I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't understand. I guess it fits the theme, the inversion of reality. In a world where I literally just say, ooh, I don't know if that's appropriate, I'm the wrong one when it comes to sexualization and drug use or simulated drug use on behalf of a child. I say, I don't know. I personally don't work that way, but go ahead and do you. I'm the bad guy. Not the billboard in Times Square with the spiral on his face, right? Not the events, dollar bills, y'all. Not them. But me. It's not copyright. It's the exploitation of a technicality to cover for the real motivation in the removal requests of my content. So I'm not trying to blow this out of proportion, guys. I just want to get that known. It's just easier. Check this out, though. I got sent this shirt. I meant to make a video about this earlier. Yo, Bohemian Grove hit me up on Instagram. Gave me this shirt. Check it. Look at that. I'll show you their website. Follow them on Instagram. Follow their, check out their website. They sent me a few shirts. This is so fucking cool. Hold on, I gotta, check this out. They're really cool guys, too. You know, it's like, I meant to mention this the other day. Sorry. I just forgot I'm actually wearing this one. I think my favorite one is probably the fucking 9/11 hijacker shirt. Can I show you? 9/11 conspirators, but it's got fucking Bush, Bin Laden, but it doesn't say Bin Laden though. But it's his real name, like Osman or whatever the fuck it was. So I just got three. These are three of my favorite ones. Go check those guys out. I just wanted to give them a shout out because they were nice enough to send me shirts that I actually fucking like, you know? It must be fun designing these types of shirts. I'll show you their Instagram. Just go to Bohemian Grove Instagram, Bohemian Grove Co. And their website here, bohemiangrove.com. Yeah, just a group of cool dudes, man. And, you know, they're based as fuck, chill-ass dudes, funny as fuck. You know, the people that you want around, the people that you want to be connected to. So if you go to their website, you can, their fucking website's so good. Adrenochrome, MK Winner Trumper, Northwoods. Hold on, where's my... Yep. So yeah, this is the shirt that I've got on right now. Northwoods t-shirt, 9/11 Conspirators. It's good stuff, man. Yeah, so consider going over there if you're into, you know, buying these types of shirts and stuff. Either way, hit them up on Instagram if you got an Instagram account too. Lastly, if you want to help support the show, like this video, share this video. That's by far the most important. If you wish to monetarily donate, you can do that. I've got PayPal, Venmo, Cash App, all the good stuff if you really want to. I understand we're not exactly in the best position, you know, but all funds go to the show, help make it better, keep me doing what I'm doing. But always, as always, the real currency for me is just liking this video and sharing it, and your continued support. I do appreciate it. Go and check out the SPARS pandemic scenario, guys, if you haven't read it. It's not that long. And it's vital, probably more so, maybe more so than Event 201. You're going to want to check that out. Links are in the description. Go check out Bohemian Grove. About the statement, not a big deal, but I'm not a pervert, and I had no ill will when I did that nonsense. So let's get real, okay? I abided by what you wanted. Just stop with the riffraff, okay? All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you later.